Hey there everybody, how are you doing on this fine Monday, depending on your time zone? Today we are doing yet another beautiful, magical, mystery extraction. The fun I like to call deck techs. And we are going to be taking one of you guys' suggestions and taking a look at Chant of the Daya. This is a deck that I used to play almost non-stop back there for a while. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It digs you out of a shit ton of holes. And it's just a good old-fashioned ramp deck. It's going to bash the face of your opponents. Plus you get to use one of my favorite all-time mechanics, Annihilator. So let's just jump right into what cards are coming with us into battle. Taking a look at Eye of Ugin, whatever you want to call him. Ugin, Ijin, we all Jin for this guy because it is a fantastic card. Color Eldrazi spells are going to cast 2 less to cost. You know what I mean. They're going to cost 2 less to cast, which that affects everything. That's going to affect your All Is Dusts, anything that is an Eldrazi spell, which is amazing. Plus, we can go ahead and get a creature card. You can't get your All Is Dust with that second ability, but the first one is juicy enough. This is a great card. It's not going to count for any other lands, so don't think you can lay that on turn 3 with only 2 forests out and think that you're going to be throwing down a 3-drop. That's not going to happen. I usually like to hold this card until the absolute last second when I get to drop it and make a dude way cheaper. If I'm at 7 mana and I've got 9 mana Kozilek guy, I go ahead and drop this and all of a sudden he is playable. I like to surprise my friends and enemies with that trick. So we run one Eye of Ugin. It looks like this is going to be a tough one just from the tongue twisters I'm already getting myself into. I have 2 copies of Green Sun's Zenith in this deck because I love to see it, because I love to get creatures and put them directly onto the battlefield. I shouldn't have to tell you how good that is. The fact that it comes directly onto the battlefield is a little bit broken. This card is going to be able to get you your Primeval Titans and any of your big hitters with Annihilator whenever you need them, so I definitely run 2 of those. Speaking of running multiples, I run a 4-pack, all 4 of the Khalni Hard Expedition. Why not? Because this thing is just a good old-fashioned card. You want it pretty much in your opening grip, but you're not sad to see it late game either. It's going to help you gain some life with some other cards that we have. It's going to stall your opponents out. You get to do some stuff on their turn, just have a little bit of fun. I really like this card. It is a ramp card, and this is a ramp deck, and this is one of my favorite ways to ramp in this deck. You can see from the build already that there are a lot of cards that I leave out of here, and Heart Expedition is just not one of them. It is good ramp. Some of the other ramp that they try and put in here is not as good as this, and we don't need it. Moving on, we'll talk about those later. Moving on, I want to talk about the 2 copies of Tangle that I have. This is a fantastic card. I can't imagine anyone not playing this. This prevents all damage to you for like 3 goddamn turns. It is insane. You're going to tap down your opponents. They're not going to untap. It's sickening how good this card is. I run both of them because it is going to buy you the turn you need. That's the other thing. This deck is a ramp deck, and so that it needs 1 or 2 turns past some situations. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes your opponent will beat you just by sheer force of will before you're able to get any of your machinations really going. Tangle buys you the extra time that you need to get everything set up. Not to mention the fact that when opponents are playing against you, they have to constantly keep Tangle in mind, which can lead to misplays. Sometimes they'll hold back the winning amount of damage just in case you have Tangle, so don't be afraid to just leave 2 mana showing to front on that Tangle, because if your opponent is semi-good, which one of the huge things that separates pro-level players, people that are way better than me, from people like me, is the ability to know when your opponent isn't holding a card. You guys will see me do this all the time, where I will look at the amount of mana that my opponent has, and I will say, they probably have this. Luckily, in this format, that's usually a pretty fair guess, but in other formats and things like that, that is kind of a worrywart system. Really top, high Echelon players know when to play past certain cards that their opponent might have. Tangle, though, is one of those cards that is going to cause your opponents to pause, so I love having it in here. I run all 4 Rampant Growth. Like I was saying, this is good land gain. It's going to get us where we need to be early in the match. It works great with Expedition. It works great with Life Gain Guy over here. So it's just a good old-fashioned card. I really like it. I love having it in the pile. Speaking of good old-fashioned cards, Gladeheart is amazing. I run all 4 copies of this guy because of the life gain. Now, this is one of this card, coupled with Tangle, is one of the things that's going to get you to that late game that this deck excels at. Like I was saying, sometimes your machinations are just a few turns behind where you need them to be. 2 life for every land in a land fetch pile is insane. You get 2 of these guys out and you're gaining 12 life a turn. It is going to shut your opponents out. Against some decks, against like red decks and stuff like that, it is going to completely lock them down. They have no chance of winning. Of course, they have cards that can get around this, but we're not talking about that. We're just talking about certain types of decks. This will completely shut them out. It's a fantastic creature. It's a 2/2 for 3, but that life gain is going to be oh so sweet. Don't generally lay him on turn 3 when you can't play a land right after him. Maybe sometimes on 4, so you at least get the 2 life, because you will have priority. Your opponent can react to the creature entering the battlefield and being cast as a summon, but you will be able to play the land before they're able to kill it in response, okay? So it's kind of complicated. It's one of those things that are really weird. Just look for that. Maybe it'll happen this week, because this guy shows up a lot since we have 4 copies of him. Speaking of 4 copies, I also have 4 of Farhaven Elf. This lady is great because she's going to grab me a land. It's not perfect because it comes into play tapped, but she does fetch, and she is a 1/1 body. Again, she's going to stall out because she can chump block and she ramps. So it's a ramp and a chump block. So basically this says, I mean, gain 2 life, go get a land out of your pile. And by gain 2 life, I mean you're going to block a 2/2, something like that. So you might as well look at that as gaining 2 life. This card is fantastic. I really love it. I want it in my deck. Into the Wilds, a lot of people fight me on. Into the Wilds is my answer to leaving out Oracle of the Daya. The reason why Into the Wilds is in and Oracle is out is simply withholding information from my opponent. I talked about this at length with you guys during some of the unlocking videos and stuff like that when I was first playing with this deck. Some of you disagree with this outlook, but I never want to show what I'm going to get to my opponent. If you guys are fans of WMG at all, there are a couple of matches where just by virtue of their opponent having Oracle of Daya out, they won. Because high level players are going to be able to see what's on top of your pile and store that information and just whoop your ass with that information. So if you want to really get up to the top ranks, you know, 200s, 100s, stuff like that, this is a card that you're going to want to leave out. Casual play, I will say that Oracle of Daya is a fantastic card. Definitely put it in here if you're just kind of playing around to have fun. And, you know, hey, that's what the game is here for. So Oracle of Daya is a great card, but if you're going into the super hyper competitive play and you want to face really high tier opponents, Into the Wilds is just the better bet, because I do not want my opponent to know and be able to. Some people have pads of paper. Don't kid yourself and think that this is just kitty magic. There are people out there who are keeping track of the life totals and stuff on the paper, even though it's all behind the scenes. And they will know exactly what cards you have in your hand, and you do not want them to know that. Harmonize lets me draw cards. Moving on. That's just damn good. Green card draw is rare, so I love having it in here. Plow Under's funny as hell. I mean, sometimes I think about taking it out, but the fact that people sometimes will just rage quit when you play it makes it an auto include for me. I mean, it's not always going to go off. Sometimes you want something else out there. I get that. But if you play a 5-drop and your opponent just goes, "Fuck this," and leaves, that's a great feeling. Plow Under, you're sticking around. It's also a fantastic card, don't get me wrong. Primeval Titan, I only run 1 Primeval Titan, so 1 Plow Under, 1 Harmonize, 1 Into the Wilds, and 1 Primeval Titan. He's got Trample, he's also going to get me a shit ton of land. Hey, guess what? That is a lot of life with these guys out there. So yeah, Titan's really good. Speaking of really good, Gaia's Revenge is insane. Have you read this thing? Have you read this? Can't be countered, has haste, can't be killed except by sack effects. So your black decks are going to be able to get this guy gone, but even then, like, he is just a beast. 8/5, slap to the face, insanely powerful. Love this guy. The haste damage is crazy. 7 mana for 8 damage is insane. He might as well be a burn spell. He's unstoppable. Plus, the art is absolutely amazing. I love that card. Avenger of Zendikar is another card. It's a one of in the deck as well, but it is another card that's just going to get you there when you need it to. It is just going to raise a huge army of 0/1 tokens, and then when you play landfall, they're going to get +1/+1 counters. So if you set yourself up correctly, you'll be able to lay this thing and then have an army of like 3-4 defenders chilling, or like 2-3 attackers on your next turn. You can really just sew up an entire game at turn 7. At land drop 7. It's not even your turn 7 because you are the ramp guy. You can really sew up an entire game on land drop 7 just with these two guys alone. It is a fantastic combination of cards to have in a deck. This guy's great. This guy's fantastic. Tooth and Nail is awesome. I almost always play it for the Entwine, but every once in a while you want to just get 2 creature cards out of your deck or slap 2 onto the field. So that makes it a 7-drop. The Entwine cost makes it a little more expensive than I usually like to have at 9, but this is the ramp deck, and anytime I see it, I'm super happy to play it. When you see this card, it's generally always the practice to play it. It is a great card. It's going to get you out of a lot of scrapes, a lot of tight jams, depending on what you choose to do with it. Don't play this guy off that card, because if you read Artisan of Kozilek, you cast it. There it is. When you cast Artisan of Kozilek, you may... So cast is the keyword. If I could underline it on here, I would. But cast is your keyword there. This doesn't count as a casting, obviously. It's just placed into play. So you will not be able to fish a guy out of your yard. Do not make that mistake, because it can cost you the game. I will, however, say that if you Entwine, you could grab that guy, keep it in your hand, and put a different card onto the battlefield. It doesn't have to be the same creatures. Moving on, I have 3 beautiful, glorious, shimmering, shining all this dusts in here, and I love every single one of them. That is going to wipe the field of everything but my big fat guys that are going to wipe the field of everything else. I love this card. Sometimes you just need to play it. Sometimes it's a 5-drop, which is sickening. I love this thing. Play it all day. Wesley Crusher here has Annihilator, so he is in the pile. He also has a couple of drawbacks, so he's only a 1 of. I don't want to talk about him too much, because that's pretty much just how I feel about him. I like the fact that he's got the Annihilator so early, because every once in a while he can be a 6-drop. He's your earliest Annihilator option, other than, of course, the fantastic, almost haste annihilating Eldrazi Conscription that we'll talk about in a second. But he is your fastest feat creature, Feety Man, who's going to get over there and do that damage and get that Annihilator going. In a lot of matchups, you're going to find that getting to your Annihilator before your opponent can get something going, especially in the mirror match, getting the first person to get to Annihilator in the mirror match wins, so having these short drops is really good for that. Eldrazi Conscription is one of my favorite cards in this deck, because it's going to come down on one of your 1/1s or one of your 2/2s that you played earlier that your opponent was not worried about, and it is going to annihilate for 2. I don't even care about the 10/10 and trample. That is icing on the cake, but the surprise annihilate 2 is what makes this card really good. It's what makes this card fantastic. Moving on, I mean, that's just, it's just that it's like haste, you know what I mean? It's just so quick, so powerful. I love it. Run both of them in there, so 2 copies of that. 2 copies of Artisan of Kozilek, because it's going to bring a creature card back from the graveyard to the battlefield, not even to your hand. It also has Annihilator 2, which makes it fantastic. And 1 copy of It That Betrays. I only need 1 of these in here. It's got Annihilator 2 and one of the sweetest abilities in the entire game. I love this freaking card. I would play so many of them if they let me. I also have 23 lands, meaning it's 24 lands with Eye of Ugin. You might think that's a little bit much since I have so much land fetch, but I really want to have a strong base early on. I don't want to rely on that land fetch, because that is how I'm going to lose. It also allows me this wide mana base of 24 lands. Also allows me to thin out the amount of land fetch that I have, and when you think about it, that opens me up to more options. It makes it a little bit easier for me to kind of come across and get these kind of combinations going early on. Scoop Mob I played with for a little while we were waiting for some of the unlocks to come. He just kind of got pushed out because he's not super quick. You got to wait a couple turns for him to get ridiculous. He never gains trample. Maybe if he gained trample, he would be in here. But Scoop Mob is just a little weak in my eyes when it comes down to the end of the day. I don't really need any 1-drops in this deck, and I certainly don't need a slow, like, 6-drop that's like a 5/5, whatever. So he is left home. Exploration is an enchantment. Additional land, that's not good for long enough for me. I mean, it's okay, but it is just a wasted slot in my eyes. See, almost all these cards are just going to be worse cards in my eyes to get lands out faster. This one is worse because it dries up eventually. This thing is always going to have something to do, you know, depending. I mean, of course, you could play every land in your deck, in which case Expedition's not good, but neither's Exploration in that case. That's kind of a, you know, tangential argument. This card just runs out of gas a little too soon. If you don't have 2 lands to play, it's not really that great. Hydra I leave out because it's got stipulations, it's not really super strong, it has to die, there's a lot of exile in the format, blah blah blah. This guy just doesn't do it for me. If you lay him super late, he's still got to wait around. I have stuff that comes out super late that has Annihilator, I have stuff that comes out super late that just hits you in the face for 8 immediately. This guy doesn't do any of that, so he stays at home. Surprisingly enough, I am not a huge fan of this kid. Explore, you may pay additional land, draw a card. Cantrips, yeah, I love that. You get to play additional land, but it's kind of the same thing as Exploration, and I feel safer with the mana fetch suite that I have. It just works better in my opinion. This thing's going to get me, I already have a lot of fetch. I don't need a shitty 1/1 to take my lower spots. My lower spots are resolved for life gain and mana fetch, mana ramp. So I really don't need Empath. I see a lot of people playing this card. You are going to draw those things. You're going to get down to like 20 cards, 19 cards left in your pile if it goes long. Even if it doesn't, you're just draining so much mana out of your pile. You're searching through your deck. You do not need this guy. I've never really seen him go off. Plus, you have to wait to play it, so it's going to be in your hand for a while, sitting there, gathering dust. And, you know, some people might think that it is going to play off with, like, this guy, and you're going to have these sick combos, and everything's just going to fall right into place. But 9 times out of 10, you're just going to have a 3-drop that gets you a big old fat 8-drop that you just have 3 mana out to play. Not a fan of this guy, he stays home. This benefits my opponent, so fuck no, I will not play that. Vengevine's an amazing card, just doesn't fit in this pile. If I had a couple of them, maybe I'd reconsider, but as of looking at it right now, it's a weird include, in my opinion. I think it might be a misdirect from them to try and get you to make it a weenie pile. I don't really know. It's very strange. Vengevine's not really a blocker. You're not playing, like, 2 creatures a whole hell of a lot. You're usually just playing 1 big fatty. Vengevine's very confusing for me. Don't know why he's in here. Oracle we already talked about. Get a long little doggy. Elvish Piper, I'm the ramp guy. If I need Piper to help me out, I'm in trouble. Turn 4, I should be playing stuff that like wipes the field, or I should just be playing this guy. I don't really have any need for Piper. Hopefully you'll see that throughout the week and you'll kind of get a feel for what I mean. At the end of the day, whenever I saw Piper, when I played with it, I was just like, I don't need this right now. I have enough mana to play all the creatures I would want to play. There's really no point for me having this guy. I was just kind of disappointed when it showed up, so that stays out. I don't need 2 Into the Wilds because they don't really do anything. They don't work with each other at all. They don't stack. They just kind of sit there, so that's stupid. This guy's a little too weak for me. It's a wasted turn at turn 5. I've got such better things to do. I mean, I can Harmonize. I get to draw 3 cards. You know, I can Plow Under. I mean, he's okay, but he's just a 4/4 for a while. And if you're wasting your turns doing stuff like this, then your opponent has a much better position because they're going to have removal and stuff for these guys. I'm not a huge fan of it. This thing is just a weaker version of this guy, so I don't actually like playing Spore Mound either. He can get a little annoying, but 9 times out of 10, he's easily dealt with before anything can really happen. Dramatic Entrance is the same kind of thing. I have too many other better ways to get creatures out a little bit faster than that, so I don't care. Bountiful Harvest gains me life. I don't get 2 shits about gaining life when it just does that. This guy blocks and attacks and stuff. This just, no. It's a sweet-ass art. I will say that, but it's just not very good. Primeval Titan, I only need 1 of them because I can toots for it and get it and stuff like that. Vigor's good, but it gets taken care of pretty easily. You could throw it in there if you wanted to, I guess. I mean, I am going to say that I really strongly am an advocate for my deep end. I think that these creatures are really where you want to be. Not to mention the fact that these are amazing just because they're haste. You know, they're haste annihilator, basically. I don't know. I really think my deep end is good, but if you wanted to cut something and put Vigor in, that's your prerogative. It's a great card. It's definitely a great card. It doesn't see a lot of play in this game from me, which is sad because I do enjoy the card, but it's just not getting a whole lot of play from me. Summoning Trap, I just don't like. It's a 6-drop. Sometimes this is a 0-drop. I gotta look through 7. I might do some stuff. I might not do some stuff. It could just be like 7 lands. I don't know. It's just not great for me. It's okay. Certainly. I mean, your opponent is going to summon stuff 9 times out of 10. I mean, there are the red-blue running around where it's not great. I don't know, it's just not good enough a lot of the time. It can be a real pain in the ass, but a lot of times when I play tested this deck with almost every card. So this thing coming out just never really got me fired up. I would draw it and just feel kind of sad. Pelican Worm gets you some life. He draws you a card. He's a 7/7 with trample. He's just too boring, too vanilla for me. Once again, my deep end is a little bit better than that. Terrestodon, I just see people misplay constantly. I don't want to deal with it. I don't like it. I don't want to give them 3/3s. I don't want to destroy my lands. I just, screw this guy. I don't like this thing at all, to be honest with you. Not a huge fan. Wesley Crusher, I don't need too many of them. Patharath the Rusarath, he's a guy. 3, can't be blocked. I mean, once again, he's an 11 drop. I don't need to waste that much time. Annihilator's something you got to get out fast. Making an 11 drop that doesn't do anything. For 1 more mana, I can play It That Betrays. Speaking of, I only need 1 of those in the pile as well. So yeah, my deep end is a little undefensible. It's just I have played a shit ton with this deck. That's just how I feel about it. That's just how I feel about the deep end. Of course, arguments could be made for those cards, but I very strongly believe that the deep end that I have in here is the best. I've got quick Annihilator over Vast Annihilator, and I don't bog my deck down with fat guys that I would love to see, but sometimes just aren't any good. So, you know, there you go. And there you have it, you guys. That is the deck tech for Chant of the Daya. We are going to be playing that all week, as we always do. Be sure to hit up this comment section below the video with your thoughts on the deck tech, your thoughts on how the week's going to shape up. You know, place your bets, and we'll see who's right down there. We'll see how the deck runs. I love this deck. I haven't played it in a while. We did a little bit of play testing. You guys might see a little bit of coverage of that. A lot of it was kind of boring. So hopefully we get a little bit spicier stuff during the actual week. But all that besides the point, I want to thank you guys for watching this particular episode. Thank you very much. If it helped you out, help out the channel by sharing it wherever you can. I would really appreciate that. But even if you don't do anything like that, I want to thank you for watching this episode, and I will see you all tomorrow.